我觉得采访就是有时候是你怕这个采访对象不够 smart， 有时候你怕采访对象 too smart， 有时候怕采访对象 arrogant。如果没有这些，其实就会觉得很舒服啊。我觉得他就是很有想法，很有讲法。
在即将过去的2014年，财新传媒总编辑胡舒立有幸2次与新加坡总理李显龙见面。一次是今年2月，在新加坡总理官邸，李显龙接受了胡舒立的专访，谈了在变化动荡的国际新格局下，新加坡如何应对挑战以及治国理政的经验。
Do you think there will be a third PM Lee after you and your father?
It could be. There are many Lees in the world. I think we are the most common surname in Chinese, in amongst the Chinese. But I don't think that it goes in the family.
第2次则是在今年11月，在亚太经合组织北京会议期间，李显龙以嘉宾身份出席了由胡舒立主持的对话中新经济发展论坛，着重谈及中新关系以及新加坡对于亚太经济合作的看法。
刚刚总理也谈到这个中新关系的一些新的迹象，那我想就是说，毕竟说是已经25周年，明年又是一个新的日子，可不可以讲一讲你有一个什么样的愿景？
我们当然希望以后25年，明天会更好。
新加坡学得学不得，向来有激烈的争论。其实，规模略等于中国一个中等城市的新加坡，其治理模式本就不可能复制到人口规模、地区差异、政治体制复杂程度都不在一个量级的中国身上。真正有启发意义的是，新加坡在变中诞生，从来在变，现在更是一个变革关头。62岁的李显龙是新加坡国父李光耀的长子。2004年8月接替吴作栋，成为新加坡第3任总理。
So can you comment that what is the pros and cons of having long-term premiers?
Mr. Goh Chok Tong was in politics for more than 10 years before he became Prime Minister. I was in politics about 20 years before I became Prime Minister. I think we were very privileged to have that long period of exposure, to learn what Singapore is about, to learn what the responsibilities are if you are in politics. And also for people to learn about you and to get to know you and to know your strengths and weaknesses and where you stand, what sort of person you are. So when you take over, people know. There's no surprise, there's no anxiety, but there's a smooth change of gears. We hope to have hope to have similar continuity going forward, but I think it would be a very great luxury to have prime ministers in future have 10 or 20 years of tutelage. I don't think we can guarantee that all the time.
在世界经济论坛发布的2013至2014年全球竞争力报告中，新加坡连续多年保持全球竞争力前3甲的位置。在竞争力诸要素中，新加坡被认为吏治清明，政府运行也极具效率。新加坡是全世界为数不多经济高速发展的同时，又能有效遏制腐败蔓延的国家。
Singapore is good at fighting corruption and has clean and efficient civil servants. China now is in the process of anti-graft campaign.
I think China's circumstances are very different from ours. Your scale is much different from ours.
What should be the next step? And any lessons can China learn from Singapore?
In Singapore, what we have tried to do is to have strict rules, to have transparent systems, so that if there's an exercise of discretion, it cannot be completely without checks and balances. But there will have to be some accounting. How was this discretion exercised? Why was it exercised this way? If anybody is discovered to be corrupt or suspected to be corrupt, we will investigate it, and we will bring him to justice, however high up or sensitive a post he may hold. And at the same time, we make sure that we pay our civil servants properly, a wage commensurate with the quality of the officer and commensurate with the responsibilities which they hold, so that there is minimum temptation for them to do something on the side in order to take care of the family. But it has to go together. You pay people properly, but at the same time you must hold people to high standards and bring them to account and justice if anybody does anything wrong. And in the last couple of years we've had a few cases, quite prominent, some to do with sex, some to do with money, quite senior officers. It embarrassed us, but it cannot be helped. We have to follow through. You cannot be limp-wristed.
How do you balance the SMEs and the state champions?
We don't have state champions very much. We have some companies which are owned directly or indirectly by the government through Temasek and a few other vehicles. But to a very large extent, we require them to operate commercially. They do not get special privileges from the government, neither do they carry special duties imposed on them by the government. So they operate commercially, they have their own boards which make decisions for them. So I would not say it's a division between the state enterprises and the SMEs.
Another question related with the balancing issue, that is maintaining competitiveness.
Yes.
And carrying the needy is always very hard to balance.
Yes.
How can we expect some policy change?
We have to keep a balance, because in every society there is that yin and the yang which is the competitive element which drives the society forward, and the yin, the softer, maybe you can say the feminine element, which expresses our care and concern for one another and the way we help one another go through life and form a society together. So we have to have the right balance. If you go too much towards competitiveness, you lose that cohesion and sense of being Singaporeans together. If we go all the way the other way and say, well, we don't compete, everybody will be first in class. And nobody will be first in class, and I think we will all be losers. And China has shifted from a very iron rice bowl system to one which is very competitive. We have operated a competitive system with targeted significant social safeguards on housing, public housing, in healthcare, in education. And in this phase, with the competitive environment for Singapore getting fiercer, with conditions getting more challenging for the middle and the lower income people in many societies, I think we need to do somewhat more to tilt the balance towards the yin side.
在东南亚这个中美竞争影响力的战场，新加坡具有战略重要性。新加坡是东南亚各国中与中国外交关系最成熟的，华人社会的联系为两国交往提供了便利。与中国无领土之争的新加坡，能够在中国与其他东盟国家中起到斡旋作用。同时，新加坡也是美国在东南亚的重要盟友之一。
So do you have concerns about the China-Japan relationship and its possible negative impact to the region?
I think you cannot go to war, because China today is not China in the 1930s. You are a unified country, you are a powerful country, you are a nuclear power. Japan today is not Japan in the 1930s. It's a totally new generation. If you go to Shinjuku and you see the children with multicolored hair, they are not the people who are going to shout banzai and charge and do a suicide attack. So I think going to war as a deliberate act is not imaginable. But frictions are imaginable, accidents can happen, and then consequences from those accidents, I think, can be very troublesome. And both sides will lose from it.
And how do you see Japan's future? Japan is the only country still living in the shade of 1945.
Well, Japan has actually played quite a positive role in the region over the last few decades. Economically, their investments have made a big difference. They invested, Singapore certainly has benefited from their investments, other ASEAN countries, even China. has a very big business with Japan. Their economy is now in some difficulty. Their population is declining. Their working age workforce has been in decline for now, I think, more than 10 years. And that's not easy to turn around. But they are still an advanced economy and still with a lot of potential to contribute to the region.
How do you think about rebalance policy of the United States? Is that a show of U.S. strength, or is a adjustment the U.S. has to do because of the relative decline of its power in this region?
I'm not sure why you would say relative decline. I mean,
relative decline is weaker.
I would look at it like that. It used to be that every aircraft carrier in the region was American. Now, not quite so. But I think the Americans are formidable, not just because of their military forces or security presence, but also because of their economic ties, also because of their soft power. Because people enjoy watching Hollywood movies, enjoy listening to American pop stars singing songs, even in China. So many of your top people, whether business or whether in government, send their children to study in US universities. So that's something which I think is
So you don't think there's
acceptable.
a power declining?
Well, relatively speaking, their proportion of world GDP will diminish as China grows, as India grows. But do they become less relevant to us? I hope not, because they've played a constructive role, and I think they can still do that.
So how does Singapore position itself in the regional and the international geopolitical landscape?
We try to be friends with everybody. We stand up for Singapore. We are not a Chinese society. We want to be friends with China, but we also want to be friends with Japan. We also want to be friends with the US. And we've not done badly in that respect because over the last few decades, relations among these countries have been stable, and I hope it stays like that.
Singapore is a very mature state while China is developing rapidly. So in your opinion, what is the most formidable challenge that China should pay special attention domestically and internationally? Two questions.
China is becoming much stronger. I think it's becoming much more active in engaging its partners in pursuing its interests and defending its interests. And one of the major challenges for China is how to do this in a way where you are defending your interests, but at the same time you can integrate smoothly and peacefully into an international order. Because China will not be the most powerful country in the world. You probably will be the biggest economy in the world within a decade or two, depending on how you measure. But there are other very major, powerful and advanced economies, and China has to work with them, and there will have to be give and take on both sides. And even with small countries, there has to be give and take, and a sense that in international relations, as the principles of coexistence say, 平等互惠互利, equal, mutual benefit, mutual cooperation. So that is a very difficult balance to strike, because you will have a natural sense of pride. You've had Fu Xing Zhilu, 168 years, China is on the verge of arriving. You want to take our place in the sun. But at the same time, you want to fit in peacefully and be looked at by other countries with admiration and respect, and not just by other people saying, he's powerful, I have to pay attention to him.
当前，全球兴起贸易区域自由化的浪潮，跨太平洋伙伴协定 （TPP） 至今已吸收了新加坡、新西兰、美国、澳大利亚、日本等12个成员，经济总量占全球的40%，贸易总量占1/3。2014年5月底，新一轮 TPP 谈判在新加坡结束。与人们预测一致的是，本轮谈判几乎没有取得任何进展。作为4个发起国之一的新加坡，是怎样看待 TPP 对亚太地区贸易和经济格局改变的呢？
As the founding member of TPP, Singapore has been the champion for free trade. To what extent do you think the TPP will change the trade and economic landscape of Asia-Pacific region?
I think it's a very significant step forward. The APEC countries altogether, there are 21. Ideally, all of them would come together and have free trade amongst them. But the 21 countries are very diverse, and there are also political complications. I think it will be very hard to have an FTA which includes all 21 countries. So the TPP is a significant step towards such an ideal of an APEC free trade region.
The TPP was once supposed to be done by the end of last year.
It was supposed to be done by the end of the year before that.
Yeah. So what are the prospects for closure this year?
I think, notwithstanding the previous missed targets, I think they're trying very hard, and we ought to be able to close this year. Because if we don't close this year, there's not much time left on the American political calendar to get it through Congress and to settle the matter. And when time passes, loose ends get unraveled, and then it will be a setback.
China has expressed interest in TPP, but also stated clearly that it won't be one in the first group on the treaty. What are the stakes for China?
Well, it depends how ready you are to move. When you entered the WTO, your Premier Chu Rongji made a very deliberate decision, and I think you should look at the TPP with a similar perspective from the economic point of view, that if you can join the TPP and commit to that, it will mean major adjustments for some of your, it could mean major adjustments for some of your companies or industries, but it should mean overall benefit for your economy. Of course, there's also a political angle and a strategic angle that you are joining a TPP in which Japan is also a partner, America is also a partner, Singapore, Vietnam, several Latin American countries are also partners. So trade is never purely trade. Trade is also an expression of who are your friends, who are your allies, whom you intend to work together with over the long term. And I hope China sees these as friends whom it wants to work together with over the long term. Although I think with Japan it will take a long time.
So you mentioned about Japan. How significant is Japan's participation in the negotiation?
They took a long time to decide. They joined quite late, but they have been participating actively, and I think that they understand what is at stake. Mr. Abe also is wanting to use the TPP as a way to push the restructuring of the Japanese economy.
So what are the most difficult elements for the potential members?
Oh, I think different countries have different difficulties. Some have SOEs, some have intellectual property, some have pharmaceuticals, so services. If it's trade, even in trade there are some sensitive issues, but in trade it was agreed in principle that nearly every item will go to zero. So that's a very big commitment.
There are overlapping trade agreements, TPP, RCEP,
yes, many, all sorts.
And ASEAN +1+3.
Yes.
For example, Singapore is in different trade pacts, so how can they coordinate?
I think it's very hard to coordinate. They overlap. You hope that together, taken collectively, they are a plus. But honestly speaking, it is a burden on businessmen to know all these rules and to comply with all the very different requirements severally, and to decide under which scheme they will get the most advantageous terms. But we just have to live with this and hope that over time we will be able to have a more open environment.
The TPP is the most hopeful one, isn't it?
Well, TPP is the one which has the biggest weight in terms of the economies who are participating, and we hope will be of a high quality.
Mm-hmm. And can help to resolve the overlap.
No, it will just add another layer on top.
Okay.
The others will not disappear.
放眼世界，新加坡无论在经济地位还是国际关系中，都面临巨大挑战。新加坡和香港被誉为亚洲比肩而立的金融双子星。新加坡一直将地理位置相近、同为亚洲金融与商贸中心的香港作为竞争对手，在税率制定、经济开放政策等方面，新加坡总是盯着香港不甘示弱。
And also some question related with China. What do you think of the competition between Singapore and Hong Kong? It seems that Singapore is in the leading position now.
I don't worry very much about competition with Hong Kong because I think we are in different positions. Hong Kong is very successful economically on the doorstep of China, servicing the Chinese market and taking full advantage of that. Singapore is in a different position in Southeast Asia. The Chinese market is important to us, but at the same time, we also focus on Southeast Asia, on South Asia, India, and on the rest of the world. So there's some rivalry, we watch them, they watch us to some extent, but I don't worry about that.
Financial center,
Financial center, I think we are in different positions. The big Chinese companies, many of them are listed H shares in Hong Kong. Smaller companies, some of them are in Singapore, but I think just a small proportion of all the business there is in China. I think the world is big enough for both of us.
I have been visiting these countries in this century quite frequently and interviewed your father, then the 7 years ago. I'm so impressive about the prosperous and economic growth recently in Singapore. So please, would you let me know what's your vision of Singapore's economic growth?
In terms of income levels, we are at about developed country levels, in fact, higher than some developed countries. I think in terms of the depth of our capabilities, in terms of our technology, in terms of the strength of our enterprises, we don't have so many MNCs. We are not so strong in research, development, entrepreneurship. We want to keep on growing. We want to keep on improving the lives of our people materially, which means our GDP has to go up, but also in the more intangible aspects of life, quality of life, the environment we live in, the tone of the society, the way we treat one another. And that is continually work in progress.
So when it comes to Singapore's sustainable development, is there a roadmap in your mind?
I think that we have to develop connected to the rest of the world, and particularly connected to our region, Southeast Asia and Asia, a region which is prospering, a region which offers us many opportunities. I think our people are hardworking, they are reasonably talented, given the right education, they can do well. But I think the best way to make use of their talents and their abilities is not just to confine it within Singapore, but to connect to what's happening around us. So if a company sets up an operation in Singapore, it's not just for our market, but for the region.
讲的也很清楚，又很坦率，和中国的关系也比较大。新加坡这些东西，有些呢，我觉得是它可能可以作为中国的经验，有的可以作为对中国发展的参考。而且另外在这个地区，新加坡的角色，新加坡实际上是叫，我记得没有说这句话叫 small country but big power， 所以一个很重要的国家，像这个地区。所以我觉得呢，他谈的呢，其实很多话呢，都值得我们很好的去体会。